And I just realized I wasn't using my microphone. Sorry about that.
Good evening.
So we don't have an approved review this evening, right? So we'll just start by having, if you have any, anything that you want to add to what's been submitted or provide a little bit of background, and then we can have members of the HARB questions. Since we don't have any members of the public here, then we'll just go from there into an action. Thank you. Members of the HARB have questions on the clarifications that have been submitted on the sign? Did you have a question, Mimi? Were you reusing the existing fastening holes that were there from the letters, or how are you attaching to the brick facade or exterior wall?
So they don't exactly line up, but we're going to use the existing hole that we can that lines up with the dimensions.
Is the end view to scale then? So are you going to try, I mean, we're typically trying to encourage people to go into the mortar joints rather than to damage the brick, just in terms of future, issues with water and so forth on the front of the building. Are you able to work with the installer to try to, if you can't use an existing hole, to try to use the mortar joints on the face of the building?
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. Write that down.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I recommend that City Council approve a certificate of appropriateness for the proposed alteration at 28 East Vine Street to install a new projection sign panel measuring 21 by 28 on 2 aluminum brackets to be mounted on the eastern tier of the building's brick facade per the submitted design, with the following conditions: that the mounts utilize existing holes in the brick facade or are mounted into the mortar joints between the existing brick.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I would just add that the work meets the Secretary of the Interior standards 9 and 10. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Since they are recommending board only, it has to go on to City Council, which is next week, next Tuesday. You do not have to be at that meeting, but I'll send you the language tomorrow. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda, we've got 110 North Lime Street, YWCA Lancaster owner, Tippett Weaver Architects Incorporated.
See you later, Zane.
Is here as the applicant. So we've got 10 different items here in accordance with the agenda. I don't know if it would make most sense if you would want to kind of maybe walk us through the project, and then we can kind of go item by item. Would that be okay?
I think so. I mean, that was what my intention was. The sheet that you have or the presentation you have is set up that way.
Okay.
So I think that makes the most sense.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, good evening. My name is Dana Clark. One of the principals at Tippett Weaver Architects. I'm here on behalf of the YWCA. Stacy Blake, the CEO, really wanted to be here tonight, but she had unexpected family obligations that called her away. So I will be standing in as both the architect and answering, to the best of my knowledge, specific program questions if the board has any related to the program that we're proposing for the renovations you're about to review. The first slide is simply a reminder of what this building looks like currently. Views of the Lime Street facade and sort of the stair tower that was added sort of dubiously in the early 1970s. Not a big fan of that stair tower, and one of the focuses is, if we could afford it, was can we do a little restoration to take this building back to sort of the grandeur in which it was constructed. I mean, if you don't know the backstory, no expense spared when they built this. And the thought behind it was that the women that were coming here, primarily rural women that were coming to the city for training, that they should have sort of the same accommodations that, in essence, a man would have. This was unheard of at that point. There was not the equity that we strive for today. So, in fact, the women that built this had to have a man co-sign the loan, because even though they had the funding, it was a man-dominated world. But this was built to sort of give those women the same opportunities, have them be in the same sort of accommodations that men would have had at the time of its construction. So that's sort of the quick backstory. We want to pay homage to that with the Y Forward project that's going on now. The overall project that this is a part of is approximately a $10 million renovation of the existing structure. As with most nonprofits, you can well imagine the Y has had its challenges with fundraising, just resources in general during the lifespan of the building. There are a lot of deferred maintenance items that we're going to pick up as part of this. And then the program has changed dramatically. So what we're trying to do is retrofit this building respectfully to accommodate the new program that the Y is now trying to address. So that's kind of big picture. So just for orientation, you guys know, or likely know, that the Y is at the corner of Lime and Orange Street. And there's a site location map there on the upper left. And then those are some historic images that we were able to gather sort of during our investigation of what these spaces looked like prior to the renovations that you see currently. You can see in the upper right, postcard view of that sort of northeast corner. And then lower left, sort of a close-up view of the Lime Street veranda. And then the bottom right, you can see sort of a band standing in front of the Lime Street veranda. So some great historic photos just for context as we move through the scope of work. You can see how those will come into play and how we use those as a resource for the reconstruction we're proposing. So I laid these out, I numbered these so we could sort of work through them logically and sequentially. If there's no objections, let's start with number one. Number one, Orange Street is on your left of that number one item. Lime Street's bottom of the page. So, as you may or may not know, the ground floor level of the Y was a pool. It was one of the only indoor pools at its time. There were pools, locker rooms, and if you go even further back, there was like a hairstyling beauty salon, and there were some other interesting original program elements. All of those, of course, have fallen by the wayside. The pool was filled in, I think it was more than 7 years ago, and it's been an underutilized space for the Y since then. They were using the locker rooms that were associated with the pool to some degree for some daycare camps in the summer, but primarily it was a lot of square footage that they really couldn't fully utilize. So now their focus has been maximizing their use of these underutilized spaces. So the proposed renovations include, so there's the SAPC, which is the Sexual Assault Prevention Counseling Center, which is currently located on the third floor of the existing building. What we're doing here is we're moving those office program functions down to this ground floor level. What that allows us to do is it frees up additional residential opportunities on the third floor. And right now, the residential portion and needs are the biggest issue that the Y faces. They don't have enough rooms to accommodate the requests that they get. So this was one way to reutilize the existing ground floor space and then capitalize on what was residential space at one point, taking that back from office to residential. So if we go back now that you have the backstory, the people that are coming and using these services, the thought was to create sort of a discrete entry for these folks. They've sort of been through a lot already, and we wanted them to be able to enter into the counseling center without having to go through the front desk and the Y proper and the residents. We wanted it to be a little bit more discreet. To that end, we're proposing a new entry from Orange Street, a new accessible entry from Orange Street to that ground floor level. And you can see, if you look through your packet, you can see the existing piers that are on Orange Street are remaining. We're fitting this in between. We're essentially creating a small ramp from Orange Street down. We've got planting areas in between all those sections. And what we need to do is, there were 4 windows, and we'll see these in a later photo. 4 windows across that front. Let's jump to that right now. Here's a blow up of that. And you can see where the double door is proposed, there were 2 existing windows there. So I'm using the jambs of the 2 existing windows to fit the new doors. Let me jump ahead one more here. I think it'll help clarify. So there you can see the Orange Street elevation, and we've sort of color-coded for you the area that we're addressing in this particular request. You can see the 4 original windows that are there. And then if you look at, if you can imagine, the new doors actually go from here to there, right? So those windows will come out, and new mahogany custom doors will go in. When we get to, so that's the proposed entry. And then you can see we have lowered grade a little bit. Grade is, as you saw in that photo, grade's approximately here-ish somewhere. We have the retaining walls to either side, and then the new accessible entry to the SAPC, what they're calling the garden level at this point. We've maintained the height of the existing windows with the new transom at the door. These doors fit within the context of, we're going to see a door on the north side that is very similar, that's existing. And then we're doing precast to match the existing, and it is in fact a precast that's there. It is not limestone, it is a precast. So we're doing all the precast work to match that work. We're also, as part of this project, we're doing restoration to that porch along Orange Street, and we're re-waterproofing that porch and doing restoration of the quarry tile, because that space is critical and is occupied all the time. The last thing you want to do is spend all the money and not make sure it's watertight. So all of that will be done as part of this scope of work. The last piece of this is just a section through that door showing how we're detailing, we're keeping all the proportions of the existing the same, and how we detailed the door and transom, the new cast stone piece at the front of the porch, and then the detailing of the new supports for that porch. You'll see some of the steel tubes in the ceiling there that we've added to help shore up that existing porch as part of the waterproofing process. So I can go backwards now. We'll go back and start with this sheet. So again, this first proposal deals specifically with the new accessible entry from Orange Street. As part of this, there will be the existing bollard lighting that's on either side will remain. There will be some small in-ground lights on either side of the door just to light that doorway. The SAPC is a 24-hour program, so we want to make sure it's clear this is the entry for that program. They will be minimum, and will be a wall graze type fixture. I don't want to call a lot of attention to it. I just want enough to people to know this is where you go. Questions about this? You want me to go through it all, or do you want to do this piece by piece? Your call, Chairman.
I think it probably makes sense to run through the whole and then come back and we can go item by item, unless members of the board have different feeling about that. Is that okay?
Very good.
Thank you.
We'll continue. So item number 2, the windows that you saw, those 4 windows that you saw, let's go ahead. So you can see that garden level all had windows to it at one point. Through the course of time, those windows have either been infilled completely or have been changed to grates, or in some cases, the existing windows were there, but they're not in great shape. Uh-oh. There we go. So what we're proposing so the windows are denoted in this plan in green. We need every one of those windows as they were originally designed to do to let light into that garden level. So the intent that we're requesting tonight is, because they are at garden level and because the Y may not always be in a position to be as fortunate with the funding as they have now, we're proposing at this level only an aluminum clad simulated divided light to match the configuration that you see currently. No deviation from the SDL pattern or from the grill pattern that's there. Let me go ahead. So you can sort of see in that image, you can see some of the windows that are existing. And the reason we're proposing either a Parrot custom window, aluminum clad, or the Marvin Ultimate series. And we have some examples of that. I think you're probably familiar with both of those manufacturers, but we do have some images to show. We can jump to. So there's two typical windows that exist. The one on the top is that area where we were just talking about, the new accessible entry under the Lime Street porch. The one on the bottom is on the west corner, southwest corner. And again, what we're proposing, what we're requesting is we're going to put all those windows back just as they would have appeared originally. We're just requesting aluminum clad simulated divided light for this garden level only. We're going to get back into other locations throughout the building where we're going back with a custom mahogany wood window completely. Because of its relative location to grade and because I can't rely on the Y to always have the best maintenance in place, we're requesting the aluminum clad for just the garden level. The window type C and D are the 2 types of windows. That's what this slide denotes. And then again, it just gives a description of Parrot, what we're proposing, the glazing and so on.
So you're proposing repair to the existing frames and so forth out of the mahogany. You're just asking for the sashes to be aluminum clad? Is that
Mhm.
Sure.
Yep.
And what's the concern from a maintenance standpoint? Are you just worried like...
They don't paint. They just don't maintain wood windows. And if you don't maintain wood windows, you guys, I don't have to tell you what happens to them. And because it's at grade, I'm just concerned that it's going to exacerbate the maintenance or the perhaps lack of maintenance because they're so close to grade.
So you're worried about how they're going to appear from the streetscape?
How they're going to appear and how they're going to last if you get water that bounces up, or, I don't know what the landscape is going to be down the road. I just think from a durability perspective and for consistency, that's why I'm choosing to do them all. I think it will read consistently, and I don't know that anyone will be the wiser, and I feel like it's the better direction for the Y from a long-term maintenance perspective. That's really what's driving that decision. When we get into the rest of these locations, you'll see that, we're committed to the wood windows and the wood doors and the replacement of those in all these other locations. We just felt like in this application, this was maybe a wiser investment. questions, you want me to just, other questions about the replacement locations or the type of windows we're proposing? They are all fixed.
But they have different light.
They do have light configurations. Those are the two. So it's the two in the upper right-hand corner. It's either what you see in the bottom left or the top of that page. Those are the configurations that occur throughout that garden level. It's one of those two.
Some look like small two lights, and you're showing 6 lights.
There's two types, right? If we go back to the plan, you can start to see here, right? These windows are all the larger divided lights. Those narrow ones really only occur in below that porch. All the rest of them are what I'm calling, wrong way. What we're calling, you can see that WC window. And they're roughly that, I need my glasses.
No, they're, well, the divide, so on the outside, everything's clad in aluminum. On the inside, it would be wood.
It's wood.
Exposed.
Correct.
The simulated divided light just means that it doesn't go through the insulated window. They're applied on either side. Because there's a spacer typically between the
And there will be in this,
glass that'll provide the shadow, right?
right here. So you can see, I mean, there'll be a spacer in, so those are the attached pieces, and then there's a spacer that goes in that space right there. And those are just some examples of the Marvin Ultimate Series and other historic projects where they've used this same window with the SDL. I know it's something that the Park Service will allow, pending the results of a window survey, of course, but
We, as the Lancaster HARB, haven't encouraged, we've stuck with wood windows here. You know, really it's been precedent. I know your firm's been before the board before, and I've heard your interest in the product, but we just, as a board, we've been fairly consistent on this. I shouldn't say fairly, we've been consistent on looking for the wood windows, but
yeah,
I hear what you're saying about the location and the wear and tear and the specific owner and the reality of that.
of the realities of a nonprofit with such a big building. I mean, that's really what's driving it. If this was a different scenario, and I didn't walk into a scenario where I've seen just the inability. It's not that they don't want to maintain it. It's just they just don't have the funds sometimes to do it. And I feel like if they're spending, I want this project to last, and the product to last for these guys as long as they possibly can without having to do maintenance and spend money, and have them spend that money on program, which is the only reason why I'm coming to you with this specific request. And again, it's only for this level, just to be clear.
And forgive me if I missed this, is this around the entire perimeter of the building, or are we only talking about the two sides that are facing?
Right there, if you look at the green areas that are shaded, I don't know if it's easier to read on your screen or not, but those are the windows that we're talking about. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, I know it's the garden level, yeah.
It's 13 windows on the south, west, and east sides.
Thank you.
You're looking down the road. What?
Okay,
So you want to roll on, you guys can chew on that a little bit?
please.
Okay. And again, this is, this just shows their relationship in elevation, these windows, in case there's any question about where these windows are. Again, this is the 3 on the east elevation. And then on these slides, I've identified again in green the locations where these windows would come into play. Okay? And then we talked about the 2 types of windows that are going to be affected by the proposed change. And we talked about the 2 manufacturers that we're looking at, either a Parrot custom window or the Marvin Ultimate Series. Okay. So then we jump into, this is the Lime Street veranda. This is the photo that you saw with the band. The band in the historic photo was standing in front of this veranda. As I pointed out in the sort of the introductory piece, that stair tower was added, I think, in 1973. And I'm not quite sure why. No one seems to know exactly why. It was an L&I thing. I'm sure it was a perceived life safety improvement. The building at this point is now fully sprinklered, and that stair tower is not required. As I talked before, we were fortunate enough to be granted almost $1 million grant through a federal earmark, specifically for the restoration of the Lime Street veranda. So that restoration includes not only the removal of the stair tower, but includes the restoration of the windows that were destroyed in order to make the connections from the stair tower into the original building. Again, those windows, we're not asking for aluminum clad in those locations. Those will be custom mahogany windows to match existing. We will also be restoring the dormer that was affected by the change up on the roof that goes to the 4th floor residences. All of that will be done as part of the removal of that stair tower, and then this veranda as well will also be re-waterproofed, and the restoration of that porch tile floor will occur also as part of this renovation. In removing that stair tower, the other thing that goes away is the clutter of the existing accessible ramp and the stairs that are currently at that location. And we saw those in the the kickoff slide that we used for the presentation, showed some images of how that currently looks. We are proposing new cast stone stairs. You'll see that right there, right? Those will be new cast stone stairs, similar in character to the cast stone stairs that are on the Orange Street porch. Those both, if you guys can visualize it, have those stairs that come off at an arc. The construction of those stairs will be of that character, meaning we're using cast stone treads. We will restore, once we remove the stair and the ramp, that gives us an opportunity to restore the balustrade along the veranda, which you also saw in those postcard views. So if we jump ahead, right? So what you see in the bottom of this presentation is the original floor plan for the building and the drawings of how that veranda was originally designed. And then you can see the postcards that we looked at previously. The dashed line in the original plan is essentially showing the location of the existing stair tower that is proposed to be removed. We end up adding that stair here. But what we're able to do by adding that stair of a character similar to what you saw, you can see a little bit in the upper left there, you can see the stair along Orange Street. It allows us to restore the balustrade that you see behind the band. Again, that was all a precast balustrade system. The accessible route, what we were able to do with the accessible route was we were able to reduce the slope of the accessible route from 1 in 12 to 1 in 20. And why that is meaningful is because it allows us to rid ourselves of the handrail that would obstruct what would have been the original view of that veranda. The walkway at 1 in 20 does have curb to keep people on the walkway, but the ramp handrail is not required. The existing windows underneath will not be restored as part of this work. There is so much mechanical equipment that is going in those rooms underneath the veranda that will be a precast infill. In fact, those windows are already blocked closed currently. So we're not proposing to reopen those windows to mechanical space. That's not a good return on the earmark that we have. The other piece that will be restored, you notice there's a balustrade on the top of that veranda. The pieces will be restored wherever possible, and the missing piece that was removed when the stair tower was installed will be put back. The other piece of the puzzle that was removed when the stair tower was installed was the cornice, the precast cornice. That will also be restored. That whole facade between the two wings, so essentially everything between the inside corners there, that all gets cleaned. The precast all gets cleaned, so it reads as a restored piece. The other piece of the puzzle that gets done, if you've noticed, all of the original porch doors, which you can see in the background with the band, those were at one point replaced with aluminum storefront. And the original transoms, fortunately, the elliptical transoms were spared, is a better word. What we're proposing, you'll see in this elevation, is to go back with a true mahogany door that matches what should or what was there. And then you can see in this elevation how the elevated walkway and the accessible route will be, the stairs and the entry pier markers, and the restoration of the windows and dormer that were located behind the stair tower. You can see some photos of the connection and some of the deterioration that we're trying to address as well from this slide. That's the long and the short of it. I think this slide helps you visualize the areas that we're talking about. All of the areas that are in green will be impacted by the restoration of that facade at one level or another. This shows details of the cornice restoration. That precast piece at the cornice is precast shell with a foam backing. For structural reasons, that made our structural engineer happier. You won't notice the difference. The shell will be identical to the precast that's there. And then you can see the restoration work and the proposed windows and keystones and lintels that are being restored as part of the removal of the stair tower. Okay. That's Lime Street Veranda. That's the restoration for that, the proposed restoration. The last piece of the puzzle, just as a final slide, these are the two types of porch doors that will go back to where there's currently aluminum storefront. This is the pier and construction of the accessible route, along with the detail at the edge of the porch veranda. Okay, the last item is on the north elevation. So the north elevation, we talked about the need for sort of discrete access to the building for the resident or for the people that are using the SAPSI counseling program. The other thing that the Y would like to do is they would also like to give the residents an opportunity to have their own entry. The Y very much feels that the residents are essentially paraded through the lobby essentially most of the time to get to their rooms. So what we're proposing in number 4 is they will have their own elevator. So we're adding an elevator inside the building. It does not penetrate the roof, but it does give the residents their own accessible entry so that they too can have a little more, it'll feel a little bit more like home for them. They have their own entry, they have their own accessible entry, they have their own elevator, they can go and they'll have their mailboxes, and all their amenities for the residents will be located in this new, what is number 4 on your plans. So you're going to enter at a mid-level landing. So you'll go up a half a flight in that elevator. That'll get you to the first floor, and then it'll take you to 2, 3, and 4. There is no access to the garden level, the SAPSI level, from that elevator. Again, just as a reminder, that accessible entry will be accommodated via the proposed ramp from Orange Street, and the existing elevator back here will also take you down to that level. If we jump ahead, the current door is a hollow metal door. And what we're proposing, it's on the north elevation. And that's what we're proposing. Again, that is mahogany door, custom mahogany door for that opening. Existing transom remains. A hollow metal door gets replaced with that custom door. And the last slide is just some marketing material that they did for their fundraising that shows how that new mahogany door and accessible entry from Orange Street may look. Okay,
You
so
proposing to paint that door, though?
We are going to paint that door.
Just curious.
This rendering was done early on. Everything will be painted in that same, they're not changing the color scheme.
Great.
They're going to stay with that white that is existing. The shame of it was like, well, it's a mahogany door.
Yeah, right.
But yes, everything is intended to be painted. So, a lot to unpack. Please ask, I can go back to any slide you'd like. If you have any questions about each of the specific 4 areas, I'm here to help.
Just start by thanking you for the thoroughness of your submission, the fact that you've got the details shown, the materials called out, all of that. So thank you very much for that.
No, you're very welcome.
Open it up to the board and in general, it looks like a great project. So
I'm excited. I think it could be a great project for the Y and the community.
So we'll open it up to the board for questions.
There we go. The entrance on Orange Street, the new entrance on the garden level,
Yes, sir.
that is, you have to go down, what, you said about 4 feet?
Yeah.
So that's going to be a stepped entrance, is that right? It's too close to the sidewalk for a ramped entrance?
No, we're going to have, so if you go to the, I'm sorry, let me go to this. So if you see this, if you go to the left side there, you'll see how the ramp is proposed to work. So you're going to come in adjacent to the southernmost pier. You're going to go down the ramp. There's going to be a planter in between, and then you're going to turn.
I see.
And you're going to go down again. There are 3 risers there. What is it? 1, 2, 3, 4 risers. So it's not quite 4 feet. It's more like 30 inches, plus minus. Let me put my glasses on. I might be able to tell you exactly.
Okay, yeah, I see it now. On the last page, it looked like it was steps, but now I do see 2 railings and in a switchback ramp. That picture, the CGI.
Yes.
I guess I do have a question. It seems like most of the things we deal with are, can we put in vinyl windows or aluminum-clad windows? And I'm kind of curious, the rationale for maintenance on the garden level windows, when you're putting in mahogany, wood windows on an upper level, where it seems to me the maintenance is going to be even more difficult with painting and so on, periodically. I'm not,
So,
help me understand the
Sure.
rationale for that.
sure. Yeah, I mean,
Of aluminum clad on the ground level where it seems like it's easy to access.
so I have an 1830s farmhouse in Lidditz. So I know, and I have all the stuff that is wood at the basement level, like the wood basement doors for the Bilco, and I have 1 set of windows that are wood. Those, personally, I'm constantly maintaining, right? And I felt as though, and I think you don't have the benefit of walking into the Y and seeing what the maintenance was. Some of the areas, the mahogany doors in the veranda, for example, are totally protected. So I felt really good about that. Plus, I felt it would have been a real stretch for me to come to this board and ask you guys, oh, hey, I'd like to do vinyl windows or aluminum-clad windows in all these locations, because it's not appropriate, and I know that. And for us, I felt like, and make no mistake about it, the mahogany windows are more expensive than the Marvin Ultimate series, to be sure. There is some amount of fiduciary responsibility that I'm sharing. I felt like between those 2 elements, they're not significantly less, but they're slightly less, and I just felt personally that it was the right solution as the architect for their project. They're just so close to grade, and I just am concerned about if a shrub grows up there and shades those windows and they never dry out, they get wet and they don't dry out. Long term, I just don't know. I mean, the wood windows on the upper floors, I know they're going to get exposed. Obviously they could plant trees or things like that, but I feel like the opportunity there to cycle naturally for the getting wet and drying properly. I'm just concerned that I just don't know what the vegetation is going to be down at that lower level. So if you have a lot of vegetation and the sun never gets in there, those windows, if they're wood, may never dry out. And then again, that's problematic for these guys. So
Are the current windows in that bad of shape?
like I said, most of them are gone. Most of them are gone. There are a couple there that are fine so let's be completely honest. There's a couple there that are fine that we could, potentially restore. I did not want, I think it was 2 or 3 at most. I did not want to do a piecemeal approach to that because I thought that would call more attention than doing a wholesale substitution correctly divided with the right putty pattern and dimension for those windows in lieu of, trying to restore to and then putting, wood windows in the rest of the locations. And obviously, as we know, even the mahogany today compared to the wood it was pine, we still don't have the same quality wood that we had. I'm preaching to the choir. You guys know all this.
Years ago, right.
So I don't need to go into all that. But for all those reasons, I just felt I was going to ask the question, and ask this board to consider that request. I felt like everything else that we were doing really speaks to honoring the tradition of this building and everything that this board stands for. And, if you know the reputation of our firm, I don't take this sort of substitution lightly. I feel like it's appropriate, and I feel like we have used it in other. I know you said you guys as a board are sort of deviate a little bit from the Park Service in this particular aspect. I respect that. That's why I'm here. So I'm just asking for your consideration in this particular situation.
First of all, I commend the Y for taking down that stair tower. It's completely unrelated. There's an award somewhere for that. But I've spent my entire career working for nonprofits, and I really appreciate the attention to deferred maintenance. It's been my experience, however, that the cosmetic details are usually pretty well tended to. It's the things that are frankly more expensive, and the things that lurk in the shadows, the major systems of plumbing, roofing, and everything else that isn't tended to it.
More than you know, yes. Or no, you do know.
But I appreciate this, and I wish that some of the people I partnered with had thought down the road in the way you are. At the same time, I can't help but think that the savings for a $10 million project are fairly minimal, and that this would be a prominent facing thing, and it would therefore get the attention it deserves.
I don't disagree that the cost savings is not the issue. I would argue, though, that I'm not sure you will be able to know when we're all said and done that what we've done here or what we've tried to pull off. I mean, it's not dissimilar. Eyes kicked and screamed when I redid my porch. I went to a through body plastic tongue and groove, and I went kicking and screaming. But at the end of the day, I replaced that porch 2 times in the 30 plus years that I've lived there, and I finally had said, this is enough, because it wore out exactly at all the open sides that you would expect it to. And I just felt like the opportunity here to not have that happen, I'm going to ask the question. Fair enough?
Absolutely.
Other questions? So just from a overall clarification standpoint, everything from that water table up would be replaced with wood product, either trim or whatever you're repairing or doing, everything
Correct.
from there up is wood.
Correct.
You're asking for consideration of aluminum sashes on the ground floor, and you're repairing the frames at that location.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that location.
And the frames would not be aluminum clad, they would
Correct.
remain wood.
Correct. Because I'm never going to be able to replicate those flames in the material that they were. I want to keep all that. I don't want to redo the detailing either. Unless there's a spot that we get into that's rotted, then of course I'll have to. But no, I'm not suggesting that I'm not going aluminum clad up to the precast. The existing wood jams. Get a blow up picture. Where is that?
I'm hesitant too. I feel like all of us are just sitting here, with the precedent of, or I should say, our practice of not permitting this. But I'm sitting here feeling like, believing that, well, given the attention to detail and the willingness to restore a wonderful building and to do it in such a, I think, sensitive and historically appropriate way, I'm almost willing to bend a little on this one. But I don't know, I don't want to be the...
And just to clarify, I mean, that we are talking about all of that stuff stays, right? That's the sort of trim and the jam and head details that we're talking about. And really what we're talking about is that piece.
But I'm not kind of...
I can, this is a very different thing than someone coming in and asking to put a vinyl window where a wood sash used to be, and the vinyl window doesn't have the dimensional similarity. It doesn't, this is something that someone walking past the building probably will not notice. I think the other thing that I would throw out is at the location, the thing that resonates with me is at the location with the high likelihood that these will be in shade. A modern wood window is not going to perform the way the original windows would have performed on the building. And so it is the weak spot of that opening. Unfortunately, that's the product that's available to us, unless you would go and get mahogany, custom mahogany windows made. But I think that there is some rationale on a project like this, and this is very different than a homeowner coming in and asking to save $200 per opening, which is what we're typically faced with.
Yeah,
And
no,
it's really, the delta is not that much. You're paying someone to come, you're paying for them to work on a window, and that's it. And it's really them just not wanting to, take the extra to preserve that neighborhood or, that fabric. This, I don't think is, this, I think, in a way, is a different type of scenario.
I guess technically we need to make a decision with a motion on the floor. Is that right?
Well, we would need to make a recommendation, and we have, Suzanne, did you give us a motion sheet for this one?
No.
Oh, my golly.
Sure, yeah.
I can tell you what you should say, work off the agenda.
No, I can work off the agenda, that's fine. I'm
I
just,
can help, maybe tell the standards,
yeah, I think I may have that,
for what it's worth, for the review we didn't get.
yes.
I was okay.
Yes. I think in general, if you have any comments or recommendations, maybe we can ask you that, if we don't have an approved review, maybe that could be our course moving
Say
forward.
that the HARB, has had a track record of not approving substitute windows. However, it's generally on a residence. You have made the exception in like the transitional living, the Weber Hotel on East King.
Oh, that's
at the
right.
rear. Now, this is not
That's true.
rear, it's more prominent. However, Secretary of Interior Standards has recently updated their brief on the use of substitute materials, which you can get online, but the essence says they're being more lenient and flexible, and it says, when using a substitute material for replacement, it is critical that it match the historic material in all of its visual and physical properties to preserve the historic character of the building and minimize the impact on its historic integrity. And I think they are taking care to do that.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
I'm sorry.
Can I just ask one question?
absolutely.
Going down those 4 stairs,
Yes.
can somebody in a wheelchair go down those 4 stairs? Or
So from the Orange Street entry, you're talking about the new entry to the garden level? If I go back to a slide here that I showed previously, hold on. So if you look at that slide, the stairs that you're referencing are on the top. The ramp, if you come in off Orange Street and go straight ahead, you're going to go down those 5 steps. If you come in off Orange Street and you go to your right immediately, you're going to go down an accessible ramp. And then you're going to get to a landing. and you're going to turn, and you're going to go down another section of ramp that will put you right in front of the new entry doors. Okay, there's a little bit of space between the entry doors and the bottom of the ramp, obviously to maneuver and clear space for the doors, but that would be the accessible route. So the person in the wheelchair would use that.
So, I mean, it's
Oh yeah, there's an approved accessible route there that I think John would have flagged me right away if I had done something incorrect about that. So, yes. You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to create motions for each of these separately? Or
I think we can probably
can we,
make a motion on all of this. Are you willing to commit to the use of the mahogany instead of the poly ash composite trim that is noted?
Yeah.
In certain spots?
Yeah, so
2.6, that's 2.6 for the board.
yes, if that,
It seems that you're going with all this mahogany work, and we're trying to preserve
we are.
existing systems, and I don't know, some of the materials, some of the synthetic materials are moving quite a bit and not.
I don't love most of it. I think the poly ash of the synthetic materials is probably the most stable, and I've been experimenting with it at home to see how it really performs.
Right.
But you're
I'm
right.
a guy who at home paints mahogany all the time, and it holds up.
It does hold up. I mean, if but like, so I have German siding on a original garden shed.
Yeah.
And it's the same scenario where I have tall plants that shade that thing all the time, and it never dries out, and it rotted all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried the poly ash in German siding, painted, and knock on wood, or poly ash is the case. So far, so good. But I don't disagree that some of the plastic products and the resin-based products do have a real trouble with expansion.
It just seems if we're up high and we're trying to work within existing details.
I think for me, it was just because it was at the lowest level, I went to that as well. But if that's a condition that you want to put on, I'm willing to accept that
Yes,
condition.
perhaps that be struck from item 2.6, but then I think that the list reads pretty much as a motion.
Was the light configuration for the new entry doors based on the historical photos and postcards that you were able to access? How are those determined?
So what we're doing for the lights at the veranda is all the lights at the veranda will be really small lights tucked into the ceiling and will downlight the veranda. It's probably more light than would have been there, but if you have a minute, I'll relay the story as to why. Apparently, the veranda is used as a shagging area. So people are just dropping down and having sex on the veranda. So light is important. So I want it to be enough to discourage that behavior, but I don't want it to be too much that it's offensive or obnoxious. So the light that is in there, we're using, I did bring that along.
I'm sorry, Suzanne. I thought all the doors were listed as mahogany. Is that?
Yeah, but the designs.
Oh, do you have a different layout? Did you have two options for us in terms of the?
No, Suzanne just said that. It made me think that.
Or is that something that?
2.9.
Let me look here. Is this in the application? Sorry, I'm not with you here.
no, this is in our agenda, 2.9.
Yeah, 2.9 on the.
That's the existing doors on the veranda, the mahogany doors, the two proposed design.
Oh, all that means is that the door on the return, let's go to the plan. Wait, let me do one question at a time. Read the question about light.
I was actually asking about the pattern of doors.
Oh, you're talking about the light as in the divided light.
Yes, sorry about that. I'm glad you guys are addressing that.
Yes.
I was not aware about issues.
No, I wasn't either.
I'm
I
glad
was caught off guard.
Sometimes those things they're not addressable in a big project like this, right? So this one's
No, that, I was not aware of that either, and it caught me completely off guard. I said, oh, okay. Divided light pattern at the lower level, that one.
yes.
Yes. So I did, that is extrapolated from the photos. Obviously, there were never doors there. So I extrapolated that based on the historic images that I had to work with as to my best thought as to scale, configuration, division of the lights, and how the panel would lay out. I don't have anything there's nothing that can prove me right or prove me wrong.
There's nothing to borrow from. It's just-
Sure, except for the east facing side, right, and then the transoms.
All the doors have transoms, so that is the consistent, whether they're flat top transoms or elliptical transoms, that's an absolute given. I felt like that needed to be part of the solution.
So that already is flat top.
So everything if we go to that north side, you'll see that flat top again. There.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The other thing that I didn't want to do is I could have replicated, you get into that dicey scenario where if you make it too authentic, then they gig you for recreating history or making a false sense of history. So the light pattern is not quite as divided as the other ones. I didn't want to deviate too far, but I wanted to make at least a gesture to the fact that I was not trying to suggest that that was an original door. I feel like it's different enough to get through that without being like stupid different. And then there was another question too. Was that?
Your last slide.
Oh, the two doors. Went too far. These two.
Just
So-
has to do with the size of the doors, I thought.
It does.
Okay.
It's just, and it has to do with the size of the existing opening. It's all based on the existing opening. That 8.6,
Assuming one you need for ADA and one can be 5 feet?
correct.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Anyone feeling moved to make a motion?
What were the alterations that you, the conditions?
Okay.
I don't have that. Where is that?
Suzanne, how many, Kurt's is a little different than mine. Are there 2.10 items or are there 2.10 items?
210. I know 2.6 on my agenda does not include the poly
The poly-ash material?
trim. The agenda submitted to us did not include on 2.6 the possibility of poly-ash composite trim. It just simply says reconstruction of an altered dormer on the east facade.
Oh, I'm sorry. These are notes, but this could serve as.
I could use
Yes, you
this.
can use that, yep.
And again, the poly-ash, the only place we were really proposing the poly-ash was at that lowest level. Everything else was already set up as
Oh, okay, all
hot.
right. Okay, all right, very good. Do you want me to read this?
Do we need to read the whole thing, Suzanne, or can we just make a motion that aligns with the text?
And if you wanted to add the condition to 2.6 with poly-mesh, that's really the only condition.
So we could read, so
All right.
so everything on the agenda with that one adjustment to 2.6, yeah.
So I move that we approve the certificate of appropriateness for alterations and new construction at the YWCA 110 North Lime Street, as enumerated here, 2.1 through 2.10, with the following condition that in 2.6, the reconstruction of an altered dormer on the east facade to include use of new mahogany, period.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I can second it.
Any discussion on the motion? I would just suggest we add to the motion that this review references Secretary of the Interior Standards 2, 5, 6, and 9. Any other discussion?
I take that as a friendly amendment.
It's a friendly amendment, yes. All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Very much.
Appreciate it.
Purposely didn't call the stair tower.
So it goes, to,
City council next Tuesday.
Okay, well, I'll make sure I'm there, just in case there's questions.
Stacy, you did.
Sorry about that.
You did well.
So I've been working with him a long time, so thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, thank you.
It is, I'm super excited for the project. I think it'll be fantastic to see that stair tower gone.
Yeah, just one more great thing happening downtown. Really?
I'm not gonna make any comment about what the HARB was doing in 1972. There were a lot of bad decisions made in that period of time, so put it in context. This looks good. The other version of that stair tower, they turned it on its side.
Wow.
So that was the other version that, when I was researching the existing drawings, the other version of that turned it 90 degrees. So so it blew out 3/4 of the veranda. And it had a bigger YWCA sign
Well, they were
across
just trying to, they're trying.
it. Yes, that was the big. It was.
All right, next on the agenda, we have administrative approvals. Any questions on those?
no.
Okay. Those are approved as submitted. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes from the May 7th HARB meeting. Anyone?
It's really detailed, Suzanne.
Yeah, I thought it was read well in relation to the complexity of the Wolf Project, museum project. Okay. Okay. Well, they had other approvals they had to go through, right? Other city staff and other approvals. All right, so no comments on that, so those will be submitted for the record. Any other business this evening? Anybody, we don't need to send anybody to city council on June 11th, it sounds like. All right,
A question, just a quick question to Suzanne. Has any more been, after our last meeting with the property at 423 West Chestnut Street, has anything else
They are not in the schedule to come back here until they need to confer with other staff.
And stormwater.
I just was curious whether you knew anything. Okay, thank you.
that will adjourn at 7:04.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.